Here are your hosts, Kyle, Fellows, and Andrew Mertig. This is the Draft Fellows Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 3 of the Draft Fellows Podcast. Make sure to follow the Draft Fellows channel on YouTube and check out the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. That's Kyle Fellows. I'm Andrew Mertig. And we are excited to be back, continuing our very first series in covering the draft classes all around the NFL. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It is exciting to be back for episode 3 of the show and just keep this rolling. It's a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to jumping into what is the NFC East today. It's going to be fun.
Big shout out to you. I know things personally for you are real crazy right now, so finding a little bit of a window to record was difficult, and I so appreciate you making the time. And I think we have some really fun stuff to talk about today. So
yeah, my internet's been out for 2 days, and I plugged it in 7 minutes before we started recording, and luckily it worked. So I'm excited that we're back. So
that is dedication, folks. So
yes.
Today we are covering the NFC East draft classes, and if you want to check out the first 2 episodes of this series and hear about the AFC East, you can follow the channel, go back and check out our previous episodes where we broke down all of the AFC East. But we wanted to get kicked off today by covering the first of the NFC East classes, and I went alphabetically, so sorry if your teams are lower in the alphabet, but we're gonna get things kicked off with the Dallas Cowboys. So they start off first round taking Tyler Guyton, the tackle from Oklahoma. They get an edge, Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan in the second. 2 third-rounders, Cooper Beebe, the interior offensive lineman from Kansas State, and Maris Luofa, the linebacker from Notre Dame, Kalen Carson, the cornerback from Wake Forest. And then, if you're watching the YouTube version, you can see the rest of their day 3 picks down below. So, Kyle, what sticks out to you most about this Cowboys draft class?
I mean, the Tyler Guyton pick is super interesting to me because Tyler Guyton was kind of that first round, second round player that a lot of people liked, but weren't sure how high into that first round he could potentially vault because of that athletic upside in his profile. He's a player that Cowboy fans are convinced that the Cowboys are intent on taking early in this draft. We know that the Cowboys did trade down before making this selection. And because of this trade down, the trade down is actually what facilitated them getting Cooper Beebe later in this draft. Like, that pick would not have happened if they hadn't moved back. So you can kind of like argue maybe if they would have sat and picked at where they were in the first round, they could have gotten a different player or a better player, however you want to argue. But Cooper Beebe doesn't happen if they don't make the move. So Guyton, super athletic. For me, I liked Guyton. There were a lot of concerns for me with Guyton because he's a former H-back tight end type who has changed his body to become an offensive tackle, and he's had some injuries along that road. So for me, it is interesting when you're trying to manipulate your body to be something different and you're stacking those injuries. That's my biggest concern, is will he find that path to health as he continues to ascend and work out some of the details in his game. But I mean, he's an easy mover, super athlete, easy to see how this is someone that an NFL front office would fall in love with to see that his potential that he could reach at the NFL level.
Yeah, we know the Cowboys needed offensive line help. That not super surprising that they go Guyton and then follow that up with a guard later. I think pick 56 was supposed to be the least surprising pick in this entire draft. It was pretty much guaranteed that was going to be a running back. And the Cowboys had a lot to choose from there at 56. And they not only didn't pick a running back there, they didn't draft a running back at all. Yeah. So I guess it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott and, oh my goodness,
Deuce Vaughn, maybe?
Deuce Vaughn a little further down the depth chart. Who am I thinking of? Number 23, Rico Dowdle.
Yes.
Sorry, folks. You can scream at me later. But yeah, I mean, like, okay. I hope this offensive line's creating a lot of running lanes because they do not have a running back who's going to create on their own.
Yes. No, there's been some buzz around the NFL that like maybe they have a plan. Like maybe they have something up their sleeve that like we don't know about. Someone was speculating about a trade with the Houston Texans for the running back that's escaping me right now. That was so good as a rookie and then didn't live up
From
to
Florida.
the Florida running back. We'll remember halfway through the show. But he was great for me in fantasy and then didn't do so much last year. Maybe a change of scenery, but we don't know what the
Dameon
Cowboys.
Pierce.
Yes, thank you, Dameon Pierce. But who knows what the Cowboys' plan is exactly at running back? Maybe it is simply Ezekiel Elliott. But I mean, Andrew, Marshawn Nealon, they added him instead of a running back there at 56. What did you think of Nealon? Because he was a player that a lot of the national media thought could be kind of that late first round surprise that last week or week and a half pushing up to the draft. And then he went kind of where we all thought he was going to go probably before that buzz started to pick up.
Yeah, I had Nealon as my 39th overall player. So I was right there as like a late first, early second, like a little bit more to me of a heavy edge, like that edge player in the 4-3. I think he works really well in tandem with Micah Parsons because he's powerful, he's physical, he plays really hard. Maybe not like super twitchy, but somebody I think can hold the edge on that opposite side of Micah Parsons and allow him to be freed up. The Cowboys have had tons of success in developing edge players. That's a specialty. We'll see how things look without Dan Quinn this year. But, certainly it's interesting to me. Sorry, this is totally changing the focus of what we're talking about here. But I think back to the draft class with Johnny Manziel, and it was said that, the Cowboys leadership was like all in on Johnny Manziel. And then Stephen Jones, the son, steps in and says, "Hey, Dad, we shouldn't do this. We should stick and draft." And they drafted either Travis Frederick or Zach Martin that year in the first round. And I don't remember which one, but like they've had a huge run of success in taking offensive linemen from Tyron Smith and the aforementioned Frederick, Zach Martin, and they keep building up these really strong offensive lines, and that's been the identity of the team. And it seems like, okay, well, we need to get a little bit younger there. They bring in Guyton, they bring in BB. We think this offensive line is going to be pretty darn good. And they're also taking that philosophy on defense, right? Like, what are the positions of value? Marshawn Nealon, right? Like, add to that edge group, keep your identity where you're able to stop the run on the outside and then also generate a ton of pass rush when you're able to do that. And with that explosive offense, having more pass rushers makes a lot of sense.
No, it does entirely. And he's a fascinating player, Nealon, because he's a player who stuck at Western Michigan, almost transferred to be with Deion Sanders at Colorado, but decided to finish out his career there at Western. And then obviously found his own way and made his own path to being a second-round pick in the NFL. Like you said, he's going to be a powerful player. He's not going to bend a lot, but I think he's going to be an impact run defender and collapse the pocket as well. But we talked about BB, is possible because of this trade back. You mentioned how they keep stacking the offensive line talent, and it just seems like, again, they might have gotten 2 starters on the offensive line in this class. Yeah. So an absolute, if that's the case, that's an absolute haul for this team.
Anything else about the Cowboys class before we transition?
No, they fell off a cliff after the 3rd round, though. I don't know. I don't know that I love a lot of the class after that, but I think they did really nice things early.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the second class we're going to talk about today is the New York Football Giants. And the Giants had picks in each of the first 6 rounds. In the first, at 6 overall, they're going to snag wide receiver Malik Nabers out of LSU. In the second, they get safety Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, quarterback Andrew Phillips from Kentucky in the third, tight end Theo Johnson from Penn State in the fourth. In the 5th round, running back Tyrone Tracy Jr. from Purdue. And then they round things out in the 6th round with Darius Mosa, the linebacker from UCLA. We got 2 linebackers from UCLA that I struggled with pronouncing their last name today.
Man, this is quite the class. Like, this is an exciting group for me because I liked a couple of these players a lot. Like Malik Nabers is a player that I loved. And in this, if Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't in this class, everyone would have been raving about Malik Nabers. And the speed is there, the yak, the rack. He's a very talented player. And I think that the Giants, who have lacked a weapon there at outside receiver, are going to get someone that they can line up all over. and really impact the offensive game plan. But a 4.35 40, and it definitely shows up on film for sure. What I loved about Malik Neighbors probably the most in his profile was that he had the speed, he had the ability to make those the play after the catch, right, and accumulate that yardage and make the plays. But he also does it with a pretty big frame, like 6 foot, 200 pounds. A lot of these guys we're seeing, they sacrifice some size for the speed, and he has it all. He has the physical makeup to be an impact number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And so it's hard to pass on that, and they certainly didn't at 6.
Yeah, there were some whispers out of Minnesota yesterday, kind of talking about how the Vikings might have been willing to part with Justin Jefferson, and their target was Malik Neighbors. And that's interesting, right? Lazy comparison because they're both from LSU, but
Yeah.
I think their profiles kind of align pretty well. I loved Justin Jefferson coming out, like I had him rated like incredibly high compared to consensus. And Neighbors, I just thought like their traits really align. Like, yeah, he is super fast, but he's not just a speed receiver. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's super quick, but he's not just a guy who's going to rely on his quickness to get open. He's just a pretty refined route runner. He's a pretty good catcher. Like, he's got great balance, all of those things. And the Giants needed help at wide receiver. Their wide receiver room is awful. And if Neighbors can step up and kind of take like, nobody should be expected to be Justin Jefferson as a rookie. Nobody. But if he can kind of take that path and be the go-to guy early, right? He doesn't need to be a 1,500-yard receiver this year. But if he can just take the lead, take some attention away, that's going to open up some things for guys like Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, and maybe their tight end room. And so like that's going to take some pressure off. It's going to allow Daniel Jones to actually throw to somebody who's open, unlike recent years, and then maybe get a little bit more of a true evaluation of what Daniel Jones can be. Maybe get back to what the Giants looked like 2 years ago when they made the playoff push.
Yeah, so can we talk about Tyler Nubin now? Because Tyler Nubin is one of my favorite players in the entire class, and so I this is a player. I watch the interviews and just kind of like try to get in the head of like, who is this player? What are NFL teams going to perceive when they meet with this player at the combine and throughout the process? And Tyler Nubin, one of my favorite interviews the entire process, just off the charts, character, work ethic, loves the game, and is absolutely going to be the locker room guy that you want. And so those are the intangible things. But this is absolutely a guy who is a playmaker. He's actually broke the record for interceptions at Minnesota. And so he's a guy who's always around the ball, and he's going to make those impact plays. I think the biggest hang up for Nubin, which probably doesn't completely round out his profile as a safety and why he goes at 47 and not probably in the mid-20s of the first round, is because he's kind of like that tweener, right? Like, he's probably not a true deep safety. He's probably not like a true box thumper, although he can do both of those things pretty well. It's not, neither one is his ace trait, right? Like, so it's just, he's an all-around safety who might never be elite in any one category, but you can absolutely leave him on the field and trust that he's going to take care of his assignments and just take care of his job.
Yeah, Nubin was my number one safety based on film, like that not factoring in athletic testing.
Yes.
But just based on film, Nubin was my top safety, and it actually was by a sizable margin. But then when I factored in his age and his, positional value and his athletic testing, he dropped all the way to 76 overall. So,
yikes.
like, he was an interesting player. That doesn't happen a lot, where the tape and the athletic testing are that far off. And so it will be interesting to see it. Did the athletic testing at the combine basically just show us what he actually is, and his playing against college level competition allowed him to look way better than he will at the next level? Or was there something going on we don't know about, an injury? Maybe he just didn't prepare for the drills. Maybe he was more focused on football stuff. Maybe he's just a guy who's faster with the pads on. That happens. So it's going to be fascinating to see. I think he could end up being a really tremendous value down the line, because, like you said, I think there was some first round buzz before the combine testing. So I think Newman will fit in really well with the Giants. Interested to see, where he is going to play, whether it is deeper in the box, like you said, or maybe a combination of the two, and how they're going to utilize him going forward. One player that really sticks out to me in this class is Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State. And I loved his potential upside down the line. I think he is a really impactful blocker and has the skill set to be a really impactful receiver down the line. And usually tight ends take a while to develop, but I don't know how long of a development timeline he's going to get, because we don't know what the status of Darren Waller is even today.
Yeah, right.
So I think Johnson is a really fun addition to this class. And I think at 107, he's a great value.
It's going to be really fascinating, and I think he is a absolute wild card. And in the 4th round, he's definitely someone you take that roll of the dice on, because I was listening to someone who was talking about Penn State has this tradition in the last 5 to 10 years of kind of underdeveloping their talent. Like, they get the crazy recruits, and even within this class, Chop Robinson is one that comes to mind. But these guys who are just like incredibly athletic, but for whatever reason, they're not able to translate that athleticism to on-field production. And we've seen it happen a couple times in the league where a guy goes on and actually does produce in the NFL at a higher level. And he's another guy where like the athletic testing just screams like, where was this on the football field? Like, does he have such a higher ceiling than what we saw when he was at Penn State? And you got to wonder if that is the case with Theo Johnson. But Andrew Phillips is a fascinating corner because he's one of the few guys in this class that I felt like had true inside-outside versatility. Not that that's the sole reason that you take a player, but it is so valuable to know that, like, okay, he can play outside. Maybe his frame being a little bit smaller would lend that he's going to play inside more as he kind of journeys through his NFL career. Really, the big hang up with him was he had 0 ball production at all throughout his entire career. So that's something, you're hoping that the sticky coverage can kind of help cover for the fact that he's not going to probably get a lot of turnovers and make plays on the ball and those kinds of things. But just looking through the rest of this class, Tyrone Tracy, Andrew, did you have thoughts on him? He's a really fascinating player and has had a really interesting journey to where he is now.
Yeah, wide receiver convert who is making his impact at running back now. And the Giants depth chart at running back, they signed Devin Singletary, but it's pretty light. And so I think he will have an opportunity to earn a role. I do like that as a former wide receiver, he's probably got a little bit more special teams value than your traditional running back does. So his ability to get that third running back role seems pretty good, and maybe fight for some carries behind Eric Gray as that backup running back with the Giants.
Absolutely. I mentioned I love the interviews throughout the process, and Tyrone Tracy absolutely has one of the best interviews in this process. A ton of fun to listen to. Loves the game. If you are familiar with Jamal Williams and just the energy that he brings to interviews and just the hilarious personality that he has, I don't want to say that Tyrone Tracy is quite on that level, but it's really, really close. And he's going to be a lot of fun for this New York Giants, beat writers as they dig in and have the opportunity to interview him and get to know him a little bit.
Absolutely. But I think that'll wrap up our first episode with the NFC East draft class.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Stick around for episode 4. We'll drop in just a couple days. Make sure you like the show, subscribe to the show, and we'll be covering every division in football over the next couple weeks. So stick with us. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game. Whoa.